So I'll use these, there's some good questions. I'll use these as a starting point to answer the question, but also to give a bigger picture behind, again, why we do the stuff that we do. It goes back to the same thing I know I've said before, and I'll say it a lot of times. The more you know about what we do, the better you'll know how to help your child go through the school. So this is along that line. So I'm glad we're having this time again. So I'm going to read the questions one by one and then approach the answer. The first, does everybody have a copy? Okay, this one I'm sure everybody has this sentiment. Our child has had several concerts, assemblies, or performances that seem to be scheduled during school hours with the expectation of our presence to witness their hard work and creativity. I would like to understand why these events are planned during normal business hours and typically when parents are at work. I've had many conversations with our child trying to explain the reasoning behind the decision not to be able to attend, and I can tell you it leaves me with an extremely heavy heart. Agreed. What is preventing our teachers from curating these events during after work hours? Okay, so I'll start with the last sentence. There's nothing, the teachers will do anything if we ask them to stay after school, and they already do, including working on Saturdays for stuff like that. So it's not the teacher's unwillingness, I'll be darned if I'm coming back to school sort of attitude. We wouldn't keep a teacher who was like that, I guess would be the best way to answer that. So, okay, then why? Probably they're thinking about the dance performance, the drama residency that we had. Then we had, the Spanish shows coming up, and there's awards assemblies during the day. Can you think of others?
The
Music shows during the day. So there's three, we've kind of come down to what things do we do at night, like the poetry show, what things don't we do. So there's a few criteria, and we're always open to talk about it some more. Good morning. One, with something like the residency, or the dance residency, or the drama residency, or the music program, one factor are the people who run the programs. They have a full life in the evenings, so for them to come back in the evening, this wouldn't even be possible. So some of that is driven by outsiders doing these special programs. So that's number one. Number two, when we're talking about awards or something like that, we have thought about maybe doing it in the evening, especially the end of the year one, because that's so impressive for all the children to see what all the kids won in the various venues of study. And there's two sides to that, though. You'll notice, like on the poetry show, it's on Friday night. And you can probably guess why. Mom and Dad come and pick up their kid, some as late as 6. You go back home all over the city, from Highland Heights to Lorraine to Medina, and then you come back again. So when we tried to do that in the past, we get these assemblies that I just mentioned are mainly for the children experience, as opposed to a performance. See, whereas the poetry show has two sides to it, and I'll get to that in just a second. So we lose out in another way. One, either the children wouldn't be there for the very performance they prepared for, and in addition to, some parents will say, well, we can come and pick them up, but to go home and come back again and then be back at school, or use another Friday night. So when we've explored that as being another alternative to these particular ones, we felt it wasn't worth making that adjustment to the schedule. Whereas with poetry show, that's a part of our signature program. So poetry, what the children gain in poetry, and I don't know how much you're into poetry, but what we do is extraordinary. You're not going to find it probably anywhere. So it's a part of a comprehensive kindergarten through 8th grade program that is in which the poetry show itself is sort of the culminating piece. So our third factor is, when we look at our mission and what's important to what we're doing, what are the things we're going to say to the teachers, to the children, to the parents? You will all be there. Everybody's going to benefit from this. It's not just the children, it's not just the parents who want to see their children perform, it's not just the teachers choosing when they'd like to come, but this is important enough to make it an evening thing. And sometimes parents will call us 2 weeks in advance, well, we were thinking on going on a vacation. We're very frank. Could you change that vacation? Because we've been working on this for a long period of time. It's a part of the whole poetry program that we do. Could you make the sacrifice? We're that adamant about it because it's such a central part. It's not just something they've spent some time on and may not again. So that's sort of the big picture. So we thought about having this awards assembly at the end of the year in the evening, but we like to see the first, second, and third graders see the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth graders, all the things that they've done, all the things that they've accomplished. It creates a esprit de corps. That, boy, this is my school, and these are my bigger students, and look what they've done, and then they aspire to do the same thing. So we've toyed in the past, but we just didn't want to see the fall off of kids not being there. See, in that one, our main goal is not the parents, it's the children, to one, reward them. And of course, a side benefit would be having mom and dad there if we could do it. And it's not always possible, we know that. But still, the main emphasis is for the children to be in that environment and to be a part of this ethos of hard work and success. And we punctuate the awards with how hard they worked, how long they worked, et cetera, et cetera. So if I could have both, that one I'd have in the evening. I'd accompany it with a dinner ahead of time, and snacks throughout, and it takes about an hour and a half, and everybody would enjoy it. But on the other hand, the risk we would run is some kids can't come back, some parents couldn't, and it's mainly I want the kids there, more than, not that I don't want the parents there, I want the children there more than the parents. So I understand this, so having it during the day, some jobs allow you to break away and others don't. And that's just a decision. Looking at all the pieces to the puzzle. That's what we came down on. That's still its best. And some of them we keep in the evening because of the mission, the number of kids involved, and the importance to the overall program. And others are during the day because of the outside teachers that are in, or the amount of whether or not it has the import to put it in the evening, have people come back. So those are all the factors that go into it. So many decisions are like this, and this is often what we run into as administrators in the school. When we're thinking about something, we have to think about all the moving parts. Whereas I know when my kids went through school, the whole world is through my kids. And so when there were things that didn't fit what we wanted to happen, you're affected that way. So we're always, good morning, running this, holding these two interests in tension. Does that explain that? Satisfied? I wish there were another way. We have done more with recording them. That's helped. So if mom and dad can't come, they can watch the recording with their children. Then certainly if anybody has more ideas, we'd be happy to listen. Other ways to do it. Okay? All right. And if a thought pops into your mind, interrupt. Feel free to interrupt. Okay, the second one. How do we decide if our child is appropriately challenged? Enough or not too much? I guess primarily children are challenged. You're looking for them learning and their classwork they enjoy. They don't enjoy homework, so don't hope for that. But you can tell they're thriving. They like reading, they like math, because what we base everything that we do as much as possible on this success cycle. It's core to everything that we do. Trying to identify a place that's a little bit above where your son or daughter is at. So they got to stretch, and they have to work a little harder, and they have to keep at it, but it's not too far out of reach so that they're successful. And in that success, no matter what it's in, whether it's in writing or in mathematics, they're happy because they grew competent in something, so there's a sense of self-worth, there's a sense of self-value, and they like it. And sometimes I've had people say, wow, you really have a good math program. And I just shrug my shoulders and maybe. I know what's really successful about my math program. I hustle the whole class to make sure kids are on this little success cycle. They're always growing. And if they're growing, they love math. But why do they love math? It's not because my strategies are so terrific. You're creating an opportunity for them to continue to grow. I had the head of the math department from Hawken come, because we were talking about alignment as our kids move on to Hawken. What are they looking for in more detail? So he sat in on my whole 8th grade class, and when he was done, he says, I haven't had this much fun in 15 years. Because you can move around, and if you know math, because if you don't know math, you're scared to death to move to the different kids because they know more than you do. But of course, he obviously knew math, he's a PhD, so you circulate to the kids, and then you introduce another thought, and they go a step higher, or they're stuck on something. And just 2 minutes of explanation, they're out of the rut, and now they got it. So that growth, that sense of growth all the time creates a positive attitude. Maybe that's a good way to say it, a positive attitude toward learning, toward education. That doesn't mean they're not going to complain, oh, that Mrs. Zeng gives me so much homework, oh, that Mr. Sproul loaded it on. That comes with it, because everybody just wants to do nothing.
Well, growth hurts.
Growth hurts, yes. But that's probably, are they appropriately challenged? That's what you're looking for. Or hints of I'm bored, or what are other symptoms? I don't want to go to school. That's a good one. Now that could be many reasons, because they're tired or whatever, or they stayed up for the Super Bowl, who knows. There could be other reasons. But you would see a general dissatisfaction. Then you know the challenge is not there. The challenge, that's central to what we do. When somebody asked recently, well, what are your best practices? And what are the best practices? And I just shook my head. I said, well, we don't, what are best practices? Whatever makes those children in front of us grow, that's the best practice. So if it's a pat on the head, best practice. If it's something I learned out of a current educational journal and it works, that's best practice. If it's old-fashioned memorization that made the child grow, that's best practice. So best practices are defined not by the things we do or the materials we have or the aids that we use, but it's children growing. And so the teachers are always trying to find that. And so the result should be at home. Boys or girls like school. Does that make sense? And you can tell, you know, when they're frustrated or bored. You know, if your child's bright, they're bored, it's not going rapidly enough, they're not learning anything, or it's over their head. All those things happen here. You know, we maybe misdiagnose the needs of a child, but, and when parents feel free to say, look, my kid hates math, what is going on in your class? Well, we'll fix it. That's because that's the heart of everything we do, is to put children on that success cycle so that they're appropriately challenged. So the question says, enough but not too much, it's that thriving piece. But it goes to the second one. This is really, well, let me pause. Any questions on that? Because I'm going to build on that one on the next question.
Actually, your theme in the clipboard is thrive.
Yeah.
So if you really want to read more on this, you could go to the back issues of the clipboard and just pick out his current essay on that. And those are on the website, right? The community tab. Go down.
Actually, and they're all listed now under Charles Debelak's blog. The thriving articles are just pulled out, so you can just go to the...
Yeah, you know, another incident came, there was a school, urban community school, they're redoing their math program, so they're going around asking for best practices in all the schools. And it makes sense, doesn't it? If we're going to have a good math program, how about we get all the best practices from everywhere, and then we will have the best of the best, and therefore we will have the best math program. And so they asked if, you know, we would come and talk about ours, and I told Mike, no, we're not going to do that. You're not even going to understand what we're talking about unless you come here, sit in on the classes, and understand it is not the books, it is not the program, it is not the publisher. All of that is included. But are the children growing? That's why the classes maximum are 15. You can't do it with more than that. How do we know? Because I'm in a class. And I know if I've got more than 15, it gets harder and harder to work with the children one by one. The time just gets stretched out. On the contrary, Nicole and I have the 8th grade. She takes a few of the kids off. I've got 15 kids. 7 groups, 7 levels of math. I can do it because I know math, and I can do it because I run every morning and I'm still in good shape. I got to move that class. You know, you're checking all the time. How you doing? How you doing? How you? And we're if the other piece of this success cycle is always talking about the kid. You didn't work that hard today, did you? No. You're teaching responsibility for your own work. It's not up to me that you grow in math. It's not up to Helene that you grow in reading. It's up to you. Do you know what you have to do? Do you know the steps? Do you know how to come to Mrs. Debelak and ask questions, or to Mrs. Little, or to Mr. Sproul? Ask questions. So you're creating independent learners. And boy, when they go to high school, it's interesting. I also had the math department head in science from Hawken visit. Again, we were figuring out alignment. And I said, so you tell us the 5 things you would want most out of your best incoming 9th grade students. And number 1, they're an independent learner. Didn't say a thing about science. They have a problem, they know how to ask the teacher, they know how to go to the textbook, they know how to go to friends. They are driven themselves on becoming successful. And that's part and parcel with this success cycle. Well, it's not merely upon the teacher to keep giving you the right material. I've got to talk to you. You know, if you're going to get there, then you have to work. And what are your questions? You know, and when the children are in the 5th grade, they don't know what their questions are. They have no ability to know how to learn. So they're passive. So we have to go from that point to the point where in the 8th grade, where we let the children know, I and the other teachers are your information booths. You recognize you need some help. We're available all the time, whenever you need us, in class and out of class. But that creates a young person who has self-agency. I'm going to school, and I'm going to school. I'm not going into your school and sitting there passively, waiting for things to happen to me and complain if it's a good class or a bad class. I'm the one taking the initiative to get everything I can out of this class. So that was the other piece. So that then when they asked if they could come and visit, or they asked us to go visit there and make a presentation, and we asked, could you come here? So next week they will, and they'll spend the morning observing in the classroom, so we can explain the same things. Again, our best practice is what's best for Sally, what's best for Joey, what's best for Sam, etc., etc. And that has, and combined with that is collaboration with parents, because you are the ones who observe enthusiasm, boredom, etc., etc.
Yeah, when it's a team, you know, I'm looking at Celeste because once in a while she'll say, I think Angela might be bored, what do you think? And then, you know, we can give our observations and you just kind of work together to either help her understand what's going on, and sometimes in life you have to be a little bored. It's a drill kind of thing. But otherwise, the teacher can, you know, lift the ceiling a little bit more. So collaboration is the best way to figure that out sometimes.
Yes, yes. At both ends. From children who are, they're not on a good trajectory of growth. They waste time, they play too many video games. They're not growing. That happens. You know, this is not elite children coming here. These are normal children. And so, you know, blocking that out from whenever it is 4th and 5th grade on to 8th grade, then we work with the parents on that, on the side of a child who's not developing the way that we want them to. But you're still, you're looking for that next level where they can keep growing. And, you know, I think that's what makes teaching fun for us, is you have a real part in watching the kids grow. Not just talk about how great your program is, but you watch children grow year after year, having more and more self-agency and therefore success. And you know the interesting thing about the success cycle, it doesn't mean much to kids, whether they're very, very smart or very, very average. It doesn't matter. So again, all my illustrations are from math, although writing too. I coach some of the writing teams as well. If children grow, they don't care if other people are much, much better than them. They're happy with themselves. So, if somebody is going to be, win some math contest or something, and then another child is a year or two behind them in terms of their level. And if you ask that child who's not doing so well, do you like math? They say, oh, I love math. And then you're wondering, well, aren't you concerned there's 7 groups and you're probably one of the lower groups? But ask them if they like math. They like math. And that's what competency in things, just like any of you in your profession. If I said, what's your profession? And you said you were a doctor. And then I said, okay, are you the best doctor in your field in the country? You'd say, oh, well, no, I'm not the best. Oh, so then you shouldn't be a doctor then. No, you would have you'd have a sense of, no, I'm pretty darn good. But you understand, the more you're achieving based on who you are, the more you're comfortable with who you are. And you're not saying, oh, because somebody is so good, therefore I shouldn't even try that. That's not even normal. When sometimes people wonder about competition, does it affect the children? I've never seen it affect the children because we have this success cycle thing going on. So they're good at writing, they're good at math in varying degrees. I told the 8th graders, because to give them an illustration, we had a boy here probably about 10 years ago, bottom of the class, but he got through algebra and kind of got him through one way or another. He was proud of himself. And he did go to Hawken, and he continued with rigorous math all the way through high school. So he did his geometry and algebra 2 trig and pre-calc and calc, sort of a normal progression. And he went on to Purdue and became an engineer. Now he's with a national firm as an engineer. But if anybody will walk in, and isn't that boy going to feel bad because he's toward it? No, it doesn't work that way. If you're getting good at something, you're proud of yourself. And you can deal with people who are better than you and say, yeah, they just can do that so much better than me. But that doesn't diminish who I am. I still have my posture in that subject or anything.
Can I give a reading example?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need something other than math. Sorry.
No. So with my co-teacher, Ms. West, with 3rd and 4th grade, we can do things like she may be reading aloud our class book, and I'm just sneaking around and having one-on-one conversations with each child, because all they're doing for homework is reading 20 minutes most of the time, because we're building a habit and building the joy and matching children with books. So I just ask every day, what did you read last night? Show me. And one child will show me a 350-page book, and another will show me a typical 3rd grade book that has 70 pages and bigger fonts. And then I might say, "But how many pages did you read last night?" And they might say 10 or 50. Depends on the child. So the child who is reading, 7 pages, I'll go, okay, how about for tomorrow, read 8? Do you think you can do that? Yeah. So I walk in the room the next day, this child almost tackles me. I read 10 pages last night. I can't even, you're supposed to be sitting down getting but they can't contain themselves. They almost tackle me. I read 10 pages last night, and we just, high five, and woo, 10, because it's based on the child.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's the small enough class size or the way you work it out with your co-teacher, we can get around to everybody to make sure they're on that edge. Another child is just, they're hooked on a series, and you just talk about the book. You just have a mini book discussion, 1 minute. You know how you love to talk about books, that's the real thing. And those are the conversations you can have with those children.
Mm-hmm.
So if a child is stuck at a certain subject, how do you move them? You see that there's not a lot of growth. You hear it from the teacher. But that's it. I mean, is it back to me to solve the issue, or how's the teacher going to help the kid get through this hump?
You have to have conversation.
Yeah.
Because what you're looking for is that what in education we call an instructional level. Where do we start?
Mm-hmm.
So in cases where we have reluctant readers in the 3rd or 4th grade, then the work comes at identifying what level of reading they're at, what interest. They probably already are shunning reading. So you have to get them started on a level that they'll be successful and they'll discover the joy of reading. So it's collaborative. If we put it all back on you, you don't have the expertise. You put it all back on us, that won't work. There has to be collaboration between. So, that's the sort of thing where you would want to go in and make an appointment. And if they say he has X, Y, and Z problem, okay, what do we do? And even if it needs more conversation on, the reading with my wife, writing and math with me, we always get involved if that's necessary. But finding that piece, and then you will have your responsibility, the teacher will have their responsibility, and right in the middle, hopefully we're moving the child up.
Yeah, because I am not a writer. I mean...
Yeah, but you'll have your role to play. And if you don't have the
definitely.
Conversation with the teacher, identifying what's that role, then it'll go nowhere.
Yeah.
So that takes, I had to come in early this morning because there's a student that we have to pay special attention to. So we're locating the point that he needs to be at so he can make adequate progress. So we came back in, Mom understands her responsibility, we understand our responsibility. Okay, let's work at it. Let's see if we can move it forward.
I have to slip out.
Okay, yeah. So the last one, I'll cover the last one. Math club, science club, power of the pen, future problem solving. Sounds like an 8th grade student. It seems like some kids take part in all of these activities, but what if everything is too much? How do we select which to participate in? Does my child have to do it all to be a success and accepted into the high school top on the list with appropriate financial aid to fit our family's needs? Okay, I'm going to start with the last sentence. This idea of high schools kind of doing what we think colleges do, who are the best and the brightest, and what are all the activities you're in, and were you on the paper, were you also an athlete, do you have good grade? That has nothing to do with getting into high schools. Nothing. So your son or daughter could have won math cons and power of the pen and the science competition, and it means nothing about getting into high school. Rather, those may be symptomatic of the kind of work ethic a child has built up. Therefore, they've done well. But what schools are looking for, and what Hawken looks for, and again, I go back to what these couple of heads of department told me, we're looking for kids who can have the attitude and work ethic that they know how to be successful. Maybe they'll be superstars, and they'll go on to Harvard or Yale or Stanford or something, and maybe they're not superstars. And they go to another university. That's beside the point. And I think, you probably have all lived long enough. After 5 years, it really doesn't matter where you went to college. Maybe if you're in politics, because you make connections. There's something to that. But I'm not sure how better your connections are at Yale versus the Ohio State Honors Program. I'd like to see the research on that, personally. So that's nothing. So parents should never be pressured. Got to get my kid into math concept. Got to get my kid into the science competition. That doesn't play into the high school thing. I know in some countries that's big. If you're not at the top of the class with a certain grade point average and you've done this, that, and the other thing, probably you're not going to go on to a superior high school or college. But that's not the case here. And let me give you a little both historical and scientific perspective on too much. The children here at Birchwood, the 8th graders, what is so phenomenal when they go on to high school is they're just fabulous students, fabulous. And then many of them, that means History Day and Mrs. Singh's writing contest. I don't know if you saw all the, no one in Ohio State even came near to what she had the kids do. And they're working with classes of 200, 300, 400 kids. She's working with classes of 12, 17. It shows the quality of the instruction that the children are getting. So all the things that the 8th graders do, I have never seen a child, no, they're all pressured. And let me add a little parenthetical word. Anybody who's accomplishing things is pressured. I don't mean pressured where it kills you. That's not good pressure. You know, for example, when I taught in Korea, children by the 6th grade were taking an exam that determined their junior high, that determined their high school, that determined their college. So in the 6th grade, you are taking an exam that determines your life. That's pressure. And bad pressure. Those are the kind of stories you hear where, you know, the suicide rate in South Korea is the highest in the world among high school kids. Second is Japan. It's because of that kind of pressure. When children are doing things where they're making growth, you can't stop them. So many times when parents will say, just like this kind of comment here, you know, I'm just worried. I always ask them, watch. Do you see them wanting to do everything, excited about what they're doing, looking forward to the day of their performance or whatever it is? Or are they debilitated? You see almost a kind of depression. And they'll always say, well, they seem to be very happy. I said, that's right. That's what happens when you're growing, when you're accomplishing things. It looks like, and we from the parent, because we love our children. And, you know, I had a mother talk to me recently. You know, I want you to know she was up till midnight, and I said the same sort of thing. Is she happy about it? And she had to admit, yes, she loves it. You know, this is the interesting thing about that. And you know, recently, if you read the clipboard, I added an article on what they've discovered about the adolescent brain. That from ages 11 to about 15, the brain is as malleable as it was from the time of 0 to 5. So those are the years that they have an opportunity like they had since the time they were infants, and how much their minds can handle, how much their minds can take in. That is not a time to reduce the amount of academics that the children do. That's a time to fill the mind up with positive things. And I can tell you, if they're not positive with all these things they do in middle school, what do you think they're going to be doing? One, a lot of texting, a lot of video games, a lot of hanging out at the mall. They're occupied with things that do not develop their mind. Now, I'm not against any of that, so don't get me wrong. I mean, this is the 21st century. Anybody who doesn't have a smartphone or isn't familiar with playing games, I'd be surprised. And oh, that just all happens. But the fact is that all these things, all the different things that the children do, are for the most part done because the children like that kind of growth. That's what they enter into. You know, last year, our 7th graders, 2 groups went on to the international round of future problem solving. So, you know what those groups do this year? They use their Saturdays and Sundays to come together at one another's homes. They've even met at a coffee shop once, just to study the research on their own. And you're thinking, you know, I mean, if you're a parent, you're thinking, honey, what are you doing? This is the weekend. But, you know, if they're going to be investing their time in something, isn't it valuable to be investing in that sort of thing? We just did the Power of the Pen on Saturday, and our 8th graders competed against all the elite schools on the east side, and our kids came in first place. So they're asking, Mr. D, do you have more time? Can you spend time with us in study hall so we can do some more prompts and you can show us how to improve? You know, it's not me saying, okay, we went this far, now we got to do more. It's them saying, can we try? Could you spend more time with us? Of course, I'm thinking, you're pressuring me, not the other way around. But when children want to grow, athletics are the same way, or music or anything. When you get that taste of you worked hard and you're growing, it just feels so good, you want to continue that process. And that's what happens. Now, in some cases where not all children do everything, thank goodness. We couldn't handle it as teachers. Mrs. Miller right now, I don't know when she sleeps with all the things she has to do for History Day. But then they say, Ms. Miller, I rewrote it. Could you read it again? What's she supposed to say? No, I'm busy. She can't. She's a teacher. Or someone says, you know, they'll come to me and say, Mr. D, I redid my documentary. They're 10 or 15 minutes long. Could you look at it again and edit it? Sure. I'm thinking, when am I going to do that? But how could you not respond to children who want that kind of input? Or they'll bother my wife about their performance on History Day, you know, or look at their script again. So, both from a scientific vantage point, this is what's going on in the brain. I remember some advice I got when I first started having kids, and just like you panic, because you know, what do I do? And I got some of the greatest help from a fellow who I looked at his 4 kids, and they were beautiful, you know, just outstanding. I said, what did you do? He said, I kept them busy from 6 in the morning till 11 at night. I said, that's all? It was positive engagement. You know, that's what he meant. He didn't mean he was, you know, hard-nosed disciplinarian or anything like that. But they're always in things where they're growing. And so consequently, that's what you like. When you grow, you want to do more of that stuff. When you don't grow, you gravitate to less productive activities. You know, and I think, you know, we all see enough in our culture right now with teens. There's a lot of things that they're not worth giving your life to, for sure. They may be a distraction, but not something you give your life to. And so, how do we select what to participate in? If your children want to, let them participate in everything. And then, you know, observe, and some things are too much. We had 2 boys on the Power of the Pen team. We have a very small 7th grade, and so we begged them to be on. So, boys, you can imagine boys in writing at that age, you know. So we said, just do it. Just spend time with us, and, you know, coax them to go in. Well, one of them comes in 6th place out of 110 students. And these are the best writers on the East Side, because the teams are not formed just any old kid. They're the creme de la creme of respective schools. So the best 6 writers from, say, Orange or from Laurel, the best 6 writers. And then we've got 11 kids, and we get our best 6 writers. So a lot of them I have to grab. You'll like it, just come. But we coached them enough so they became successful. And so that, you know, right away they're so proud of themselves. Something they couldn't do before, now they can. And then you get some momentum going because of their participation. Well, let me pause. I would say one more thing. The only time I've seen children pressured is when parents are pressured. And let me explain. Children don't know whether or not to be pressured. They know to be pressured if top down they're being pressured. If they're coached how to handle things, they're never pressured. Because mom and dad aren't. You recognize the value of what they're doing. Now sometimes that may mean mom and dad have to spend a lot more time sitting next to them. You know, giving them the moral support, giving them the willpower to plow through things. But very seldom are children pressured unless mom and dad are pressured first. So that's often what happens. So if you understand, if you're not convinced that the activity they're doing, History Day or Power of the Pen or Math Counts or all the writing competitions, if you're not convinced it's valuable, then you're going to hesitate at their participation. As soon as you see the value, then even when they don't want to do it, you have an attitude of holding their hand. Okay, we'll do it little by little. Just do as much as you want. We don't have to do the whole thing. Let's just do a little. And so just like you would teach them anything, you break it in little by little, hoping to see that level of success. Then once that success begins, then they continue at it. So that's more of a, whether or not they're pressured is more of a parent's strategy. Is it valuable? Okay, it is. Then we're going to do it, and I'm going to help you experience the happiness or the joy that's inherent in it. I think this is helpful. You know, you have a concern about something, you bring it out and understand the big picture. And let it sit and settle, because we have a total of 5 more minutes yet. personal, I mean, anybody have concerns just personally? Because oftentimes your concerns will be echoed by others.
Just based on something that you said, well, like a lot of the kids at 5th grade, they're still trying to formulate them and form them into being responsible and self-motivating and things like that. What do you do beforehand? Like, because mine are small, mine are sprouts in 1st grade. So what do you do between that time to make sure that they're going in the right direction?
Right words and right habits. It's kind of mindless. It's sort of like when you first teach them, you say thank you, say thank you, and then thank you. You know, all the emotion and sincerity of a rock. And my grandkids are like that all the time. Their mothers say thank you, thank you. That's so insincere. But the constant verbiage of what's right, and then habits. You just insist on the habits. And then as the children get older, then you can begin working with their reasoning. So now they have some habits. It's hard if they don't have habits. And it's hard if they don't have some foundation of, being harped on at home to say hello and thank you and, all that stuff, if that's not there. But if that is there, then from 5th grade to 8th grade, a lot of it is working on their reasoning. Why would you say thank you? Why do you do that? Or when I talk about discipline in the class, so sometimes I'll just say, you just be quiet, because we need to have class. But other times, two kids are talking and we're all trying to study, and then I'll say, okay, now why shouldn't you talk right now? Because you don't want us to. No, there's more reason than that. Why shouldn't you talk? You force them to think. Why don't you talk? Why wouldn't you talk while I'm talking? It's so impolite. And plus everybody else is trying to listen and you're just chattering away. So you have no respect for anybody. So eventually, all good behavior, there's rich reasons why we do it. And the more when children, prior to their becoming in their teens, the more they have not only the habits, not only the verbiage, but the reasoning behind it. The more they'll behave by reason and not just by habit. If it's just habit, or if it's just mom nagging them for 8 years, then they'll get to a certain age and then you get rebellion. They're just not going to listen to you. Well, that's going to happen anyway. You're not going to change that. But I often think of giving kids the right reasoning is, in a sense, you're going to be following your children everywhere they go until they're 25. Because you put reasoning in them. You can't follow them. They're not even, they're not going to even answer their cell phone or their smartphone when you try to call them. They can do whatever they want when they're teenagers. However, if you've taken the time when they're young, the habits and the language, and then when they're older, the reasonings, then that's how they think. So yes, you're a teenager, you explore everything, you go against what even you know is right. That's just by definition what a teenager is, but something bothers them. And that's what you're hoping for. There's something deep inside. So often I tell parents, in a way, you can almost guess your children are going to do things you prefer they not do in their teen years. But what you want to do is make them feel like dad may walk in at any moment. So they're still going to be naughty, but they're just thinking, oh my God, if my dad were to show up. So it's a conscience thing. I think I wrote something last month about conscience. It's your sense of guilt or your sense of embarrassment or your sense of shame comes from, the word conscience means with knowledge. So if you've been talking to them how you get along, all the problems your children will have, give them rich reasons of the right behavior. That all gets into them. That all affects their conscience. And that the conscience is what follows them in the form of mom's voice or dad's voice. And that is what we aim at from 5th to 8th grade. So we'll often interrupt, with the, I took advantage of the Super Bowl and their success at Power of the Pen to talk to the kids for about 20 minutes. What's your success at the Power of the Pen, Tom Brady's success, and Bill Belichick's success, and then of course LeBron James. I love LeBron James. And we just talked about it wasn't just your talent. Those other kids are just as talented as you are. And Tom Brady's a great quarterback, but pure skill, not the best. Belichick's a brilliant mind, but there have been a lot of great coaches. So what's the difference? They put the time in. They love something, and they made it their point. They're going to work harder than everybody else. So here you are, you 17 kids, we got a team of 6 going against schools with 200, 300 8th graders, and you won. What made the difference? You gave up your study halls, you gave up some of your Saturdays so that you would get better. Okay, so that's a reason. You know, are they going to go out and, work harder? Nah. But it's the constant taking advantage of the opportunity to talk to them about what's the reasoning behind why we do what we do. And it's a much bigger task to do it this way than it is to, because I told you. That works with your children right now. Why, Mommy? Because I told you not to do it. But the older they get, it's just not going to work. So Mom and Dad have to spend more time. It's a big commitment because you realize that's not enough. I have to give them the reasoning that a mature, responsible, and virtuous adult has to behave rightly. And then live with failure. That's the other side. Okay?
Well, you can't just leave with that, then live with failure. You have to explain. What do you mean live with failure?
This is the most, maybe this is a good way to conclude, okay? Both with the children when we teach them, and both with parents. If you don't see what you're doing with your kid as increments of improvement, and what marks improvement? Just a little bit. Not too long ago, I had a mother wanting to scold her child in front of me to make an impression. And then when it was over, I told the child to leave, and then I talked to the mother. I said, we do want this child to get better and better, but you have to recognize his growth's going to be like this. Tiny, tiny little steps. And if you don't see that, and accept the failures, and take the failures as, okay, after your anger subsides, I just told you, because that's our normal reaction. I'm going to kill you, kid. To just shut up, calm down, let's talk. What can we do better next time? The commitment for parents is huge. But you recognize nobody grows like that because you told them what to do. So when I talk to these 5th graders, we begin talking about reasoning, I have no hope whatsoever that I'm going to change them one bit within the course of a year. I have no hope. Not literally, but that's how I feel. Because I know what happens. They go right back to what they did before. So then we look at, each time there's a failure, we talk about what did we do wrong? How come that didn't work that time? And you talk about it. And then there's increments of progress. And it really does 2 things. One, you get a close attachment to the children because they know you're not just judging them all the time as an authoritative figure, but they also know you're not going to let them off the hook. You're going to hold them accountable. But then it always comes with, let's do this incrementally. So they know the trust is there, the confidence is there, but then there's progress. So failure plays a very important part, ironically, in developing the character of children. And same thing in subject matter. They fail, they didn't do what you did for the 5th time. So you have to look at, okay, I'll come, and let's take it from that point and bring it to the next level. It's nothing but pain for the parent and pain for the teachers to do this. It's so much easier to lose your temper and, do something dramatic. Okay, we should stop, huh? Yes, thanks for coming.